Hi everyone, this is Esateys.
Wow. And this is Rafael, and welcome back to Relationships Done Different. And I'm just hoping I get through today's program in one piece, because our subject today is, would you rather be right or happy?
And I know you want to be right and happy, and you think you always are, right?
I was actually thinking it just didn't apply to me at all. That's why I was saying I was kind of hoping I would get through this broadcast in one piece.
Well, why would you go into pieces?
Just for what's happening right now.
Because you might be
okay, everybody, we are just getting right down to, this is a really, really important thing for relationships.
Yes, honey, so listen.
I'm going to, if Esateys is under her breath, I don't know if you could hear it. She was saying that I should really listen to what I'm going to say. No? Okay, so we're an incredibly happy couple. We've been married for 14 years. I know Esateys for 20 years. And yet, we still would rather be right than happy. Or at least,
I am happy.
At least this part of me, and I got to be transparent.
First of all, I am happy. And because I'm happy, I know I'm right.
See what I said? You can't win. So anyway, so today we're going to be talking about a subject that goes through every relationship, goes through every aspect of being with someone, and really, more importantly, about seeing yourself.
So it's really, let's go back to the beginning. Not like
in the beginning.
And in the beginning. Actually, what I'm referring to is, if we take the basis of us as human beings, we are made up of love or fear. They're all the same thing because they all come from one source point. But if we want to separate it because we live on a planet that has black, white, up, down, right, wrong, good, bad, or whatever, because it's a polarity-based system, then we know that we are going to be living in one of those two worlds unless we aren't. So that means that the way to true happiness is to live in the world of really being happy and seeing even what you used to think wasn't right or wasn't good or was evil or whatever also makes you happy. And it makes you happy because you know that ultimately it truly is happy. So Raphael's rolling his eyes like crazy. Okay, so, all right, I'm going to go back.
Maybe you can make that a little simpler.
Okay, I'll just get back on subject. Okay, so, on a different subject. So the point is that we have an ego, and the ego desires, the real purpose of ego, just in case you ever knew, was to create safety for us, in particular, on a physical level. That was the point of the ego. Or it is the point. All the other stuff that's around the ego, or all the other stuff we have that we now these days call ego, those are just add-ons. They're like programs that we've acquired. But the true base core of ego is to protect us from walking off a cliff or in front of a truck or something like that, because if there wasn't a certain element of caution or AKA fear, then we wouldn't live very long, which is actually happened a lot anyway. But if we recognize that the purpose of that is to keep us basically alive, then we would stop putting emphasis on the ego, because now the ego has taken on a world of its own, a mind of its own, if you will. So when we ask the question, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy, what occurs is that the ego wants to be right because that is A, demonstrating control, B, it is putting itself in a place where it is higher than, better than, and it's driven by competition. So if it can be right, then it feels empowered. It feels like, oh yeah, I am the one who has it together. I'm the one who is in a high level of power. And therefore, when we think about the ego being right, it feels pretty darn good and it has the illusion of being happy. But remember that no matter how happy a ego pretends it is, it's always pretend. It can't be happy because ultimately it is based on fear. And when you're in fear, you're not happy. Am I making myself clear?
You are. So the thing that really struck me there, and I really was reinforced for me, is that this stuff about being right is all about our basic need to be in control, which basically is feeding or supporting our need to be safe.
That's true, and because it makes us feel empowered or powerful, that tells you immediately that we feel disempowered and weak or impotent in some or many areas of our life or all areas of our lives. Therefore, we have to go out and we have to struggle, strive, fight for being better than, being more than, being bigger than, whatever it is that will help us feel like we are in control and we're more than the other person. So the ego is always vying for more of the energy in any given situation. So if I'm right, I'm basically taking your energy. I'm basically making it so most people's ego, will feel less than.
Or weaker. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that we've often talked on the show about that we are not in control of ultimately we're not in control of anything.
Except our perception.
That's right.
That's even in question, but we won't go there in the show.
Okay. I'm going to just come back a little. We're not in control of anything physical or things are just happening, and we're not in control of that. So that and we have basically no say in what happens. That's
already aggravating so many people, I got to tell you.
Right. And now
you just said that.
And okay.
So I'm sorry. I know I just keep interrupting you because I'm just in that mood today.
Okay, that's cool. So basically, what I'm hearing, or what I'm trying to say, is that if the basic premise is that we have no control over pretty much anything, then the need for control is that much stronger. The ego's need to be in control and to be safe is even amplified beyond what it is that we consciously understand.
That's true. And this is why we talk about non-resistive living and we talk about being in the flow and allowing, and that's why you've heard for eons about surrendering and all that kind of stuff. Do you know why that is?
Tell me.
It's because the ego needs conflict to survive.
That sounds counterintuitive. Explain.
Are you
please.
serious?
Why does the ego need... I don't understand that. Can you explain?
The ego is fed by conflict. Conflict is...
But why does it need it? Why is that feeding the
because
ego?
Because it's an energy that sources the aliveness of the ego. So when you are not in conflict, when you are not resisting, when you are not trying to fight for anything, then the ego's purpose is no more, because the ego's purpose is to create conflict, so it has its own set of personalities, if you will, that make it feel like it's something or somebody. When you take the energy away from it, it dissipates away. It's like all the air goes out of the balloon, and it doesn't have any power, it doesn't have any right to, it doesn't have the ability to survive or to stand strong or whatever. So it will go out and look for things to create itself feeling like it's more. Like, if I get more money, I'll have more power. If I have more sex, I'll have more power. If I I know you want that to be the exception, but I'm sorry. I
like power. It's okay.
That kind too. And therefore, it's always looking for something to create a more mentality, because in and of itself it feels empty, and it is a lack principle. A lack principle means it is powerless. It needs something to make it feel like it is something. Therefore, when you are arguing, when you're trying very hard to prove yourself right, which means the other person will be wrong, to gain that kind of energy, then what occurs is the ego is alive and well, and it's very, very excited, because it's got the adrenaline running, and it's got the competition going, and it's creating friction. And the friction, you've seen people rub two sticks together to try to get a fire. Well, it's kind of like that when you rub.
Remember, I'm a city boy.
Oh, well, you've seen on TV, haven't you?
Okay.
Maybe, was it Tom Sawyer or somebody? I don't know if he did that. But at any rate, so when you get these, when you get this rubbing thing going on, you will create a fire. It creates conflict. It creates an abrasion. If you rub your knee on the ground, or you fall off your bike or whatever, and you scrape it, it's because of the rubbing of the skin against the pavement, which breaks the skin down and causes pain and blah, blah, blah. But the point is, it creates change. And the ego wants that to happen for itself, because it feels more empowered to be able to control where your frequency is, where your energy is. Because if you're living a lot in the ego, then and the personalities that are involved with that, which is another whole show, then what occurs is that you have a false sense of being empowered, when in reality you are actually more impotent than you were before, because you are giving food to the, so to speak, or you are feeding the lower vibrations, instead of letting that part starve away, if you will, and enhancing and feeding and living in and nurturing and allowing the essence of who you are, the love of who you are, to really flourish.
Okay, so I was going to ask the $64 question, and maybe you answered part of it.
I thought it was $64,000 question.
Well, for those of us, whatever.
Okay, I'm in inflation. You go ahead.
I'm amazed you even remember that.
Me too.
Okay, well, let's get back to this. So my question is, what is, if the ego gets stoked, if the ego gets sourced, it gets fed by this conflict or this need to be in control, why do we even pose the question, would you rather be right or happy? So how do we become happy if we give up the need to be right?
How do we be happy if we give up the
if we give up the need to be right? How will that make us happy? Because now the ego is not getting sourced.
Because you have a thought right now that happiness comes from the ego. If you're not feeding the ego, then happiness is the essence of who you are. Happiness is the core essence of you. It's the joy, it's the light, the whatever words people use these days for the core essence of whom it is that you truly are. So if we are saying that it's not a matter of being right or wrong, it's just happening, then we're not having any conflict. Without conflict, you're left in the natural essence of yourself.
And ultimately, if one's not aware of that, is that empowering for someone?
If someone's not aware of what?
Not aware of being in their natural self or whatever, don't they feel impotent? Don't they feel unempowered, disempowered if they're not right?
Their ego does. And if they're living with their primary functioning on a day-to-day basis from their ego, they will not feel good. So ultimately, you have to let the ego feel what it feels, but this is where you come in as a who you are piece, and you start observing what's going on. You observe the ego feeling bad and running a program of impotence and powerlessness and weakness and all of that kind of stuff. But that's when you, who you really are, is observing that, and it internally is, for lack of a better term, this isn't really accurate, but is chuckling. Oh, look, that part of me, the ego, is just feeling whatever. So it's doing whatever it can to make me come back fighting. Come on, baby. I want to come back fighting. Because if I do, then I'm into conflict, and then the ego gets the joy of the win, for lack of a better term.
Okay, I get that. And I guess the next question is, how do we do that? Now, for me, I've had the experience of having certain conversations with you where I was certain I was right, and you were pretty certain you were right. And how does one get to the place of being able to just let it go, even if we are so darn sure that we're right?
By recognizing that there is no right and there is no wrong and there's no good or bad. There's only perceptions. So your perception that you were right is a perception. It doesn't mean that there is an absolute to that. If I was, quote unquote, fighting to be right, it would be my perception. And so the truth is, nobody's ever wrong. They're right according to their perception, but their perception doesn't get to leave home base, if you will. It's when you take your perception and you project it on somebody else, which immediately means that you're right and they're wrong. That's where the conflict comes in. That's where the issue arises.
So we're basically taking our perceptions and forcing that on someone else.
Mm-hmm.
That's very powerful.
Yeah.
So, and I know you've said this a million times, but just to repeat it, so there is no right and wrong because it's all governed by one's perceptions, and your perception is no better or worse than mine.
Except the ego will say, except mine is better.
See, there she goes again. I can't get, it's like,
But in
I can't get a word in, I'm sorry.
But in actuality, what you said is absolutely accurate. But you have to be aware enough and awake enough to recognize that. And the people who are living strongly in their ego, they're probably still not listening because
Hello, everybody in your ego.
Is there anybody left on the call? Because they do not want to consider that they're right or what they have, what they think, what they do is the best. And it is the best for them in that moment, but it's only for them.
I got it.
Okay,
I am totally speechless now. And so help me, what do we do in practical terms? How can we really, I know you always say we just should be aware of it, and that's the answer for pretty much everything that we say and do. But what practical suggestions can you give us to better be in touch with this?
Well, awareness is definitely the first step. It's always the first step because you have to have awareness to know that something is up for you. People don't feel most of the time their feet, their knees, their skin, their nose, or whatever, unless something's a little bit out of sync. Unless there's an ache, there's a pain, there's a sensation of some sort. That is your clue. It brings you to awareness that somebody's calling out to you or a part of you is calling out to you. So the first step is to have an awareness. And one of the things you can do is to say, help me be more aware. Just say that to your mind and to your internal self. Write it in a journal. Write it in a gratitude journal. I am so grateful that I am more aware than I've ever been before. And what will happen is you'll become more and more aware. So that's one thing. So once you have the awareness, then what you want to do is to look at what is your payoff for fighting for whatever it is that you are doing. And be, again, conscious that what you're fighting for, is it worth it? Is it worth creating that conflict with that person just so you can, puff on your fist and rub your chest or something like people do? It's like, I got that right. Because you know then that you're feeding the ego. Many of you have heard this story, but I just want to say it real quick. And I've probably said it before on these podcasts, but for those of you that are new to this, the story is about this little Indian child who goes to his chief, and he said, I really need for you, chief, to help me with a problem I'm having. I have these two wolves inside of me, and one of them is telling me all of the things that aren't working, all the things that are bad about me, all the decisions I make that aren't good, all the bad things that I've thought, and all of that. And the other one is constantly saying, oh, you are so wonderful, you have helped this person, you are doing that, you're learning so much, you're very smart with this, you know how to do that. And they give me completely different feelings, but I don't know who I'm supposed to listen to, who's really telling the truth. And the great Indian chief says, the one that you feed. So what that means is that if you take your energy away from being right and you allow people to think what they want to think and do what they want to do, that one will probably push your button. But at least people think what they want to think, and don't feel like you have to stand up and fight for every single thing that you think is so, then the ego will maybe not be happy at first, but you will be a lot more peaceful inside. You will have more peace in your day-to-day world and in your body. It's the resistance to what people say, feel, think, do, or what we see on TV or what occurs that's causing the pain and suffering that we are living in. You have the ability to change that. Remember that suffering is optional. You get to decide if you want to keep on repeating things over and over in your head, or if you're going to let it go. And if you don't want to let it go, then ask yourself the question, am I trying to be right here? Am I trying to prove something here? And what am I doing? And where do I want to put my energy, my thought? The things that I am feeling are based on which wolf I am feeding. And when you think about that, then your body can quiet down, your mind will quiet down, and be aware that sometimes the ego will pop up and try really hard to pull you back into the lion's den, because that's its job. Remember, if you don't feed it, it goes away. It has a survival mechanism based within it, which means that it's going to come up with nasty words, very likely. It's going to make you wrong internally. You're going to have all kinds of programs of things that people have said to you or about you, from your parents to your friends to your siblings to wherever, until now the ego has taken on a mind of its own, and it's repeating that stuff, and it's multiplying it times a godzillion, and now pretty much you feel like pig throw up most of the time. And that's where you have to make a decision about where you are going to focus, and that will help you determine how you feel and how you live on a day-to-day basis. It really is very practical.
So to me, what keeps coming up, and I've been wanting to say, is this is really about fighting for one's limitations.
That's great. That's very true. It's very, very true. You're fighting for your limitations, but most of the time, people will not think of it as a limitation. They will think of it as empowerment, or they'll think of it as I need to make a change. I need to have other people be what I think they ought to be. And it's that mindset that creates people fighting all the time.
And it's the limitation is not about the specific subject. It's about the need to be right. Doesn't matter whether you're right about the particular subject or not. It's about the need that you need to. It's like when you're in the water. Two people are in the swimming pool, and one person pushes the other person under the water so the other one, the person pushing, can be elevated. And so that's what I think the limitation is, that there's an inherent need to be elevated, to be on top of.
To survive. It really boils down to a survival mechanism. Who's going to win? And so it's something to contemplate. I invite you all to really contemplate and do some introspection about how you be. Observe yourself, not with any judgment, because we're doing what we're doing because we didn't know what we didn't know. Now you're beginning to see and feel and become aware of things that you didn't know, and there's no reason to beat yourself up for that, which most people do, but please don't do that, because it's completely unnecessary, and that itself feeds in to you being really disempowered. And therefore, when you are asking yourself, when you've got something coming up on a very, very practical level, what you can say is, as you remember these words that we've been speaking throughout this entire show, is, do I want to be right? Or do I want to be happy? Or am I so powerful, so solid in myself, that I can let that other person think that they're right, because it doesn't matter? Because maybe they are, and they are for them. But your right might not be the right for them. We grew up with programming that tells us that this is right and this is wrong. That's the society that we live in. But who made those laws up? Who made those rules?
That's the collective ignorance that you often speak about.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that was good. That was really, really good. And it's something I look at this all the time, and I can't say I'm totally there about that, but a lot of times I just say, what am I arguing about? And sometimes I get triggered and I can't get to that place. So just before we go to our question, what is the trigger? How do we deal with that trigger that comes up that makes us feel we are so right, we can't not be right? What's wrong with this guy? He's so wrong. In other words, you get that?
Well, part of what it is that you do is that's a program running. And so the first thing you do is recognize, oh, I've got that program running. And rather than do it with any kind of energy, just become the observer, because when you're the observer, you don't have a lot of energy on it. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. If you are really in the vortex of uproar, of the rage, and you can't think of anything else except that you're right and they're wrong and they did something to you and you're victimized, then just go with it, because you will unlikely have the wherewithal to interrupt the pattern. And if you have the wherewithal to interrupt the pattern, then that will be the most powerful thing you can do. So one of the things that you can do is to just shut your mouth, sit down, close your eyes, even if you do it for 30 or 60 seconds, and just breathe in through your nose to the count of 5 very slowly. Hold it between your eyebrows for the count of 5 very slowly. Exhale through your mouth to the count of 5 very slowly, and repeat that cycle of 5 times. If you do that, what'll happen is all of the hormones that are activated will quiet down, and at that point you may be internally quiet enough to be able to say, okay, what's my payoff for doing this? What am I trying to prove? what would happen if I allowed myself to just be still and allow this person or this situation to be the way it is. And if you do that, you'll notice that everything changes for you. The other option is to just be still, go within, use the breath, and feel in your body where the sensations of that discomfort is. What are the sensations in your belly, in your throat, in your chest? Are your fingers clenched? What's going on a physical level? And without any story and without any label, just feel the sensations. And either one of those things will do tremendous things for you moving through that.
It's very cool because it'll just take away the agitation.
It shifts the focus, and it shifts the neurological responses, and it shifts the hormones, and everything changes. And that's how you become a master of your life, of your mind, of your existence.
And that's the power of the breath. When you get into that rhythm of the breath, even if it's only a couple of times, you'll shift those neurotransmitters
very fast.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Okay, we have a question today from Sue from Seattle. And she has a question. Last week we talked about a new paradigm for multidimensional happiness. And her question is, you talked about what would it take for me to have an expanded mind? That was our question of the day. And her question is, would meditation help this? Do you have any suggestions?
Meditation is something that I really, really love. And meditation is very intimidating for most people. And that's because they have a misunderstanding about what meditation really is or can be. So meditation can be the same thing as just contemplating something, sitting down and just being with something. It's not about trying to stop your thoughts, because that isn't going to happen. So meditation is also utilized beautifully by the breath. So when I just spoke about the cycle of 5, that's a meditation. Breathing in, holding it, exhaling, that's a meditation. If you sit quietly every day, preferably more than once a day, even if it's for short periods of time, and you just breathe in and observe the thought processes that are running through your mind, and you aren't doing anything with them, you're not judging them as good, bad, right, or wrong, you're just noticing that they're coming and going like a cloud in the sky, that's a meditation. Another kind of meditation is when you're sitting there and you're speaking a mantra. And some people have mantras that they've been given by special teachers, and some people have seen them in books, and it can be whatever it is that you would like it to be. One of the reasons for the mantra is to just give your mind something to focus on, so other pieces of you can quiet down. Meditation also has to do with just being in a state where you're just walking down the street. That's a state of meditation, especially if, like, you go on the beach and you're just watching your feet in the sand. And you're noticing that thoughts may come and go, but you are just really focused on feeling each individual grain of sand on your skin. That's a meditation. So the point is, and I could go on, but those are all different kinds of meditations, and meditation is extremely powerful. I have done a lot of guided meditations. Some of our programs have guided meditations or processes, which is another word for meditation, on them, and they really help relax and bring you to a state of presence. So yes, Sue, it's absolutely not only helpful, it's really critically empowering to meditate. If it's 5 minutes in the morning, that's better than nothing at all. And therefore, meditating every morning, taking a few minutes in the middle of the day, even if you're just doing the cycle of 5 breathing at night, what it does is it gives your body a chance to quiet down and release the quiet hormones, if you will, and let go of the adrenaline and the other parts of yourself that have kept you at such an elevated, anxious state. And the more you meditate, the more you will be able to deal with the things that come up that are going to want to keep you from your unconditional happiness, for the multidimensional ways that you can really experience life. And it will also help you with what it is that we're speaking about today. The whole thing about being right or being happy has to do with conflict, and the purpose of meditation is to allow yourself to reduce and then ideally eliminate the conflict, so that in and of itself will work.
So I like to think of it as the meditation allows you to clear out all the junk, and your greater consciousness, your greater knowing will just then have a place to come in, because you've emptied it out from all these other extraneous thoughts.
Well, meditation opens up an expanded mind, and we spoke about that on the last show, and I invite you all, if you didn't listen to it, really go back and listen to that, because it's about expanding the mind in all of the areas of your life that you have compacted or structured in such a way that nothing new can come in. And when you do that, you'll see how much your life changes.
Very awesome. Oh, and one last thing, you were talking about meditation, and I just wanted to say we are actually working on, we have a vault of meditation programs, that meditation processes, if you will, that we've created, and we are actually going to be putting them into a membership area, hopefully within the next 60 days, to get all that completed. And that'll be something that will be very, very helpful. We get questions about, do you have meditations, and all the time. So that is something Esateys, when she does those, they're very, very powerful, because they access that part of the mind that just opens up, and sky's the limit. So that's forthcoming.
Yeah, and before I give the question today, I also want to just let people know that if you're really drawn to this work and the things that I speak about, we're doing a public retreat in Portland in September. And in addition to that, I am starting a year-long program for people that are very dedicated and very committed to their own expansiveness, to their own awakening, to living in a multidimensional level of life.
And happiness.
And happiness. So here's our question. What is my payoff for trying to prove I am right? What is my payoff for trying to prove that I am right? When you ask yourself that question, when you're in a state of conflict, and you just ask that rhetorical question, not looking for an answer, but rather just putting that out to your Google search engine to bring back what it takes for you to shift from that or become more aware of it, it will occur.
Well, okay, so everybody, that's very, very powerful. Okay, we will be seeing you next week, and next week is very, very cool. We have, the name of our program is going to be What's in Your Backpack? Defragging Your Hard Drive of Old Non-Supportive Programs. Think about that. What's in your backpack? We carry around all this stuff. And we are going to talk about how to defrag your hard drive of those non-supportive programs.
All righty then.
Are you ready to be defragged?
I'm ready to defrag my hard drive, clear out my old archived files, and
don't
move
forget
on.
your RAM. Okay.
My RAM, if it's not applicable, I want it out.
I think the analogies of our mind to all of the computer stuff is just so incredible that if we really understand how our mind works, we can just see the similarities and learn from it.
It is fun.
Okay, we will see you next week, everybody. Have a great week.
We are counting the moments. Feel a hug.
Take
Talk
care.
to you soon.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye for now.